Hey, it's Mike from Go Cell Phone Repair, and I am doing sort of an impromptu kind of stream today because yesterday was another holiday. That was 2 Mondays back to back, and I didn't want to leave anyone who shows up for the 2 p.m. Monday live stream, 3 weeks without a stream, or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or whatever that adds up to. So we also do this on Thursday evenings at 6 p.m. So if that's more convenient for anyone out there, hopefully we can get you to participate one way or another. Some of the topics we'll be discussing today are over here on the left somewhere. I think right about there, right? Happy New Year. Throttlegate, right to repair. I have a repair training announcement to make and also some backlight issues that I wanted to discuss with other technicians out there. We'll get to all that right after this. All right, so from the top of the list, and I want to add one more thing. Right now, I have good stream health. I don't know what it is about YouTube or my ISP or something, but lately I've been having some problems. So obviously, if you see anything funny, like my audio's not coming through, or I'm lagging, or it gets choppy or pixelated, throw something in the chat. I'll keep an eye on that, and hopefully we can maintain this for at least an hour. I don't know what's going on. I did 2 hours last night on another stream, no problems. Got on today, and everything went goofy, so whatever. In any case, Happy New Year to everyone. I hope you had a great holiday. I know that there are quite a few people out there who are probably happy that 2017 is over. So I wish you all success in the new year, good health to you and your family, and hopefully your business is thriving and everyone benefits from this economy that we're going to be entering into for the new year. Now, beyond that, I also wanted to make a quick announcement. On January 16th, we start phone repair training. So I do a 4-day program where I take people who may have little to no experience or some experience and get them to where they can become proficient in repairing most of the phone problems that you're likely to see. That typically will include display, broken screens, water damage, charge port, modular component replacement, and we do an introduction to micro soldering. Obviously, within 4 days, there's so much that you can fit into that program, but in my estimation, you'll have hands-on experience with a variety of late model phones, and you'll be able to address at least 80 to 90% of the problems that you're likely to see people bringing you. Now, obviously, there are some advanced things that kind of go beyond that, and we can only fit so much into 4 days, but we get quite a bit done, and you get to see, recent model phones that are damaged, get some hands-on training and some feedback as far as technique and diagnostics go. And you get to hang out with me for 4 days and pick my brain. So if you're interested in that, be sure to take a look in the video description. After the stream ends, I will add links for that information for all of the sources that I use during this stream, which I always do, and I will also include timestamps. So if you want to kind of just jump to a particular topic, you can do that, because sometimes these things end up going on for quite a while. And beyond that, we really like to see your comments. So if you're not logged in, make a Google account real quick and log in here so you can chat and we can get the discussion going. That's kind of one of the main things that I love about the live stream format is, I'm not just talking to a camera and then people come back and watch it later, which is fine too, but if you get to be here live and offer your input, we get to, kind of generate a lot of ideas that, maybe I will forget along the way, and people kind of remind me to do that. So the big thing is here, and actually a viewer kind of prompted me to go ahead and do this. I started a live stream, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, regarding the iPhone battery thing that was going on. And we had a little trouble with the video at that time. And I'll be on the chat in just a second, guys. Hey, good to see you. Playlist, Harvey, John Cassidy, what are you doing? Okay, I'll get to that in just a second. I'm going to hop over to the comments in just a moment. So, long story short, stream failed. I'm very disappointed because I had all kinds of information planned. But you know what? Today's a new day. Things have changed. We have new information on this. And I am very interested to hear what you all think, not only as technicians, but also as customers. If you own an iPhone and now you're being told that, yes, we did slow it down because of the battery. It's not your imagination. It's not because you updated your phone. But if you come in and make an appointment, you might be able to do a walk-in also, but we're only going to charge you $29 to replace your battery. Is that going to make you happy? Is that enough? Is that really the right answer? Because I can think, I kind of had my opinion, but I'm interested to hear yours as well. So we will also jump into that in just a second. So let's get the chat here on the screen. John Cassidy, it said, what are you doing to now with iPhone battery replacement because Apple's prices are so good? So short story, John, is this. you know, the number one thing we should all be thinking of as cell phone repair owners, shops, technicians, all the above, is that we need to have these batteries on hand, number one, right? Secondly, do take into consideration that, you know, initially when customers went to Apple, my understanding was that Apple would run a diagnostic on the phone first of all. So, you know, it's going to be one of those long, complicated answers. And I know what we want to be able to do is respond to the customer. You know, when they walk in the store and say, hey, Apple's giving me a $29 battery replacement, what can you do? Well, I can do a couple of things. I can match Apple's price, and I can say, you know, I get the benefit of a long-term customer. You know, there's a good chance they're going to come back to me because I said, yeah, you know what? I'll do that repair for you, and you don't have to wait in line, and you don't have to deal with the Apple process, which some people are okay with and some people prefer not to. You know, so really looking at this for the long term, I think that it's a good idea for us to at least be close to where Apple is on this price. You know, realistically, your battery should be costing you about 10 bucks roughly, so it's not a huge loss. You know, there's obviously some liability when you open up the phone, but we're hoping that we build that goodwill with the customer. So they say, wow, you know what, this third-party repair shop can do everything that Apple does for me, and I don't have to go through Apple's process. You know, we have a few other benefits, and that is if there's other damage to the phone, we really don't care. You know, if your frame's a little bent or your screen's cracked or the phone is out of calibration, whatever that's supposed to mean, we will still repair that, you know, we'll still replace that battery for you. So, you know, if your question is, you know, I don't really feel like I'm making enough money by matching Apple's price for $29, I know that kind of sucks. And, you know, there's a few different ways you can go. You know, you could say, hey, you know what, I'll do it for $39, no waiting, and I'll throw in a tempered glass. You know, we can be creative about this. Anywhere from $29 to 50 bucks, you can probably still be okay, you know, still be able to close the sale with that customer. And I have a feeling that a lot of the people that walk into a third-party repair store might try to play that, hey, Apple can do this for me card, but there's a reason that they're coming to you. Either someone referred them there, you've done business with them in the past, or they really don't want to go to Apple. They just want to kind of say, hey, will you match their price? And if we say, look, here's what we can do, you know, we can, choice A is we get into that long explanation of why you should do business with us, why we're easier, all these things that we can add, you know, extra services we can give you. Or if you feel like, and this is, I think this is where the real question in my mind is that when somebody calls your store and they say, how much does a battery cost to replace? You know, the first number that comes out of your mouth may change that customer's decision. So for the short term, you know, we're not adjusting prices that much. I'll do a battery replacement for $39 for a customer. That's $10 more than Apple. I still feel like I'm doing the best thing, you know, in the customer's best interest and in my best interest. Now, we'll find out within the next few weeks whether or not that's going to make a big enough impact that we have to say, well, let's go ahead and adjust that down a little bit lower. But I feel like the services that we offer, and again, we can always throw in extra stuff. You know, you want to glass, I can't go blank here, tempered glass. You know, obviously we have to be careful with the MFI cables and blocks because they cost a little bit more. But I think that we offer a lot more services than Apple does across the board, and there's really a reason generally why the customer's coming to us in the first place. You know, it's not too often that a very loyal Apple customer who thinks that, oh, you have no business working on an iPhone unless you work for Apple, they're not generally going to come to us. But, you know, we really have to see how that plays out. My suggestion is, do what it takes to close the sale. You know, wherever you have to start, and there's always a negotiating process, but use the tools that you have available to you and see what you can do. But the last thing you really want is a customer to walk away and say, okay, I'm just going to go to Apple, right? We really don't want that to happen for a number of reasons. It's not in our best interest, and in many cases, it's not in the customer's best interest also, but it's a very difficult thing to do to communicate why that is to them. So I hope that answered the question. The short answer was, I'll do a $39 battery replacement, and you don't have to wait in line, and you don't have to deal with the Genius Bar, and you don't have to travel to your nearest Apple store. For Playlist, he says, nearest Apple store to me is 1,000 kilometers away. Yeah, business as usual in that situation, most definitely. For the new year, people will still come. Yeah, great. Hey, Robert, hey, Happy New Year. If I buy a brand new iPhone and came with a defective battery, it should be replaced for free. And that is where I think the real question lies. And not only if the battery was defective, but if Apple said, we are going to make your phone run less than optimal because your battery is getting old. And I know there is a manufacturer's warranty for 1 year. So really, when it comes down to this thing with the lawsuits, I'm really questioning you know, how successful any of these people are going to be. I don't know if you heard this. There's somebody suing for like $1 billion, you know, which is typically what they'll do. They start off at a really high number and hope to get like a fraction of that. So if they get 1% of $1 billion, they're still doing really well, right? But I really question how that's going to work out because at least in the US, when someone sells you something, if it comes with a 1-year warranty and it does what it's supposed to for a year, I think you're going to have a difficult time getting, you know, a class action lawsuit even to cover beyond that warranty period. Now, I may be wrong. Obviously, I'm not an attorney. And if we look at other areas, there are some examples that we can pay attention to. France is a great one because they actually have laws that prohibit planned obsolescence. So even if your warranty is expired, if you can prove that a manufacturer purposely made this, you know, whatever it is that you bought from them, fail after a certain amount of time in order to kind of encourage you to buy a replacement, which, you know, this is kind of what we're seeing here. They have a law against that. And I wish we had something like that here in the US, but, you know, there's another argument that that would obviously make it difficult for people to compete if they had to worry about, you know, taking care of something that they sold more than, you know, beyond the warranty period. So I think that's a real gray area. We'll have to see something go to court. Maybe there's something on the books already that they'll use, you know, as like they typically do. They'll look at another court case and say, well, here's how they ruled in the past, and that may apply here. I really don't know. I'm definitely, I don't have the legal resources at my disposal that it would require to make, you know, even an educated guess. But, you know, just as a consumer, I think the bottom line is that I don't feel happy with the choice that Apple made personally. This is just my answer, okay? If I have an iPhone and it's 5 years old, and I want to replace my own battery, or I'm using the old battery and it only lasts 3 hours instead of 8 or whatever, I don't think it's okay that they purposely throttled the performance on that device. You know, if you wanted to give me the option, how easy would it be to build in something into the next iOS release and they could announce this publicly and say, hey, you know, in the future, we're going to give you the option to turn off that throttling feature if you prefer to have maximum performance at the expense of your battery not performing the way that it's supposed to, you know, for as long as it's supposed to. I think that would be okay. I don't think offering a $50 discount on a battery is in the customer's best interest. I think that, again, is where Apple, in my opinion, has taken the stance that, you know what, we messed up, we got caught, how do we profit from this? And we do it by saying, we're going to give you something to get you into the store. You're still going to do more than cover the cost of the battery and the labor involved. And finally, at least one other thing that I would suggest to people here, and I really want to know if anyone goes to Apple, you know, please comment here. Ask them, if I take my iPhone 6s in and you replace my battery for $29, is it still as water resistant as the day that I bought it? Because I'm very curious to know if they have the capability within the store to install that waterproof gasket that goes underneath the display the same way that they do at the time of manufacture when they first put that thing together. And I question, you know, you'd have to have a dust-proof environment. You probably have to have a specialized machine to align that thing perfectly. And my guess is probably not, but I'd really like to know the answer to that one also. Samsung had an issue with the batteries and they exchanged the whole phone. Imagine that. Hey, we screwed up and we give you 100% of your money back or we'll upgrade you to another phone. Yeah, and that, obviously, Samsung doing some damage control there because of the liability. You know, if you have a battery that can make your house catch on fire or blow your side of your face off, then yeah, you want to do everything you possibly can. So, you know, not exactly the same scenario, but I do give them credit for saying, hey, we messed up, we're going to fix it, we'll give you a refund. And I don't think refunding the phone is, you know, necessary really, obviously, for Apple, but at the very least, give me the option of controlling whether or not I get the performance out of that phone that I did at the time that I bought it. Just curious, is there a way to reset the battery? Well, if you're talking about the cycle count on the battery, yes. So if you're talking about restoring it to full capacity, no. That's the short answer, Harvey. So if you're talking about batteries in general, you know, lithium ion polymer, same difference pretty much for what we're using now, only has to do with, I actually did a lot of research on this recently because I was trying to determine the best way to maintain your battery. But once it starts to lose its capacity, you're not going to be able to get it back to 100% of it was when it was brand new. And they're very picky about charging methods and charging temperatures and things like that. Now, here's an interesting thing about this. There are ways to test to see how many cycles your battery has been through, and technically it is possible to reset that cycle counter, which explains why oftentimes you buy a third-party battery and it says it's brand new, and you plug it in and you check it and it says it's got, 1 cycle count or 0 cycle counts or whatever, and it doesn't perform the way that it's supposed to. There is technically a way to reset that information on the battery. Hopefully there's a law against that. It should be. It's very similar to resetting the odometer in your car. You're representing something as having a certain lifespan ahead of it, and then you're altering that information. So technically that can be reset, and if you run into a vendor that does that, obviously we want to avoid them. And it's unfortunate that it's not really that difficult to do, but I don't think a lot of people are really doing that. And obviously, if your battery doesn't last like it's supposed to, then there's a problem. But as far as restoring it to its full capacity, no. We do see a lot of people, even now when customers come in, they get very confused, because if you think back 15, 20 years ago, we had nickel cadmium batteries and nickel metal hydride batteries. And one thing about the NiCads was that they would in fact develop something that they call a memory effect, which would reduce their capacity, pretty much to whatever the battery was used to being used for. So if you use it for an hour and put it on the charger, use it for an hour, put it on the charger, pretty soon the battery almost became conditioned to only lasting an hour. Fortunately, we don't have that issue with lithium-ion batteries. They are supposed to be immune to that for the most part. And my understanding, and again, I've done research here, and I probably should cite my sources here. I'll try to add those in later on. But with the lithium-ion batteries, one thing that causes damage to them, basically reduces their lifespan, is charging them while they're at a high temperature. And I'm sorry, guys, I actually had this information in front of me 2 weeks ago when we started doing this. I'll try to pull it up again and put it in the notes or in the description. But if your phone is running a lot of processes and it's at a very high temperature and you have it on the charger, that's actually very unhealthy for your battery. And when is someone likely to be charging their battery and not use, if they're using the phone, obviously they're using up some of those processes, and that's probably one of the best ways to cause damage or reduce the lifespan of your battery. How much do you charge for an iPhone 7 aftermarket compared to OEM, and is there a bigger profit margin for one? And do you try to lobby for either type of screen? As far as encouraging the customers, at this point, yes. Long story short, I wouldn't say there's as much of a profit margin difference, but there's a bigger difference to the customer. It's about $50. So the customer can save close to $50 by using an aftermarket screen. Obviously, that comes with some, I don't want to say problems, but it's something that people would have as reservations. Okay, so if I can get an iPhone 7 screen for $20 and I can install it, I'm going to pick just a round figure because it's easier, but you can expect to pay in the neighborhood of $75, let's say, for that screen to be replaced with a $20 screen. Okay, so the thing is, if I have to get an OEM screen, I'm going to have to increase that price by almost another $50 in order to still generate, close to the same profit. In fact, in many cases, I end up making a little less on OEM screens, and there's a reason that I chose to do that. With the OEMs, we're going to have a far lower rate of defects. So usually when we install an OEM screen, customer's happy, the screen works, they walk out the door, and we don't have to worry about it again until they break it. Now with aftermarket screens, I'm just going to take a rough estimate here, somewhere between a 3 to 5% defect rate. So a lot of times you put the screen on or you plug it in, it's not working right, you have to grab another one off the shelf, or you install it, later on the customer decides, hey, you know what, I don't like the way the colors work, I'd rather have the OEM. Well, sure, if you're willing to pay the difference, that's fine, but now I've got 2 removal and installations invested in that same phone. So it really ends up kind of costing me more in the long run. I don't push either screen on the customer. I try to stay as neutral as possible, and what we do is we hold up an aftermarket screen and an OEM screen next to each other or next to the customer's phone, and we say, here's what we have for this price and here's what we have for the other price. Which do you prefer? Unfortunately, one way to really get yourself blown out of the water is when someone calls in to another shop and gets an estimate for an aftermarket screen replacement, which is what a lot of people are choosing to do, and they call you. And if the first price you mention is your OEM price, then unless you have the opportunity to give them the explanation as to what that difference is between those 2 screens, it's easy for them to just hang up and call the next guy or go to another shop or whatever like that. So I prefer to have the customer in front of me so they can really see the difference and know what they're getting for the price. I don't really promote either one. You know, it's entirely up to them. There are different types of customers out there. You know, some insist on the same exact quality that they got from day one, and plenty of people just want to pay the lowest price possible. So a lot of times I'll probe a little bit as far as what their plans are long-term for that phone. Are you fixing this so that you can trade it in at your carrier and get a discount towards another purchase? Because if so, you'll run into a lot of people who could care less what the screen looks like. As long as it works, they just want to get their credit. And then you'll have people who are very picky, or you'll have someone who says, oh, you know what, I'm going to upgrade in 2 months. All I want to do right now is spend the least amount of money possible, get my phone working, and then, you know, worry about that upgrade when it comes. So that's a real open one, but I don't really push for any particular screen. You know, whatever the customer wants, that's pretty much what they're going to get. I just want to make sure that they understand what to expect from either of those choices, if that makes sense. My customers never want the original screen. They always choose the cheapest. I buy the cheapest of the cheapest screens, by the way. Yeah, and, you know, really, I think depending on your clientele, your location, you know, how much experience your customers have with getting phones repaired, that's going to really determine what they choose when they come to you. And by all means, you know, if what they want is the cheapest thing possible, and there's plenty of that going on, then that's what they can get. And I'd say that at this point, it's a greater percentage of my business when it comes to screens using aftermarket LCDs, now that we've got some pretty good quality out there. You know, up until like a year and a half ago, it was tough to find an aftermarket LCD that looked as good as the original, and now they're doing a really good job with it. So the good news is it also looks like iPhone 10 refurbishing is going to be a real thing. And the downside, of course, is at least for the time being, we don't have any other sources that we can use for buying OLED for iPhone 10. So it's got to be an original refurbished for the time being. But long term, I hope that we get someone else jumping into that market and manufacturing those types of displays, because that's the one thing that's kind of stayed constant, you know, for the last, you know, since the beginning really, is if you look at any of the Samsung Galaxy series phones, it takes 5 years before those things really have a dramatic price drop, you know, and that's really because there's just overstock and nobody wants them anymore. So the manufacturing process is tied directly to the cost of that replacement part, and there aren't discount. You know, I get people all the time that say, hey, where can I get a cheap Galaxy S7 display? No such thing that I'm aware of. You know, if one becomes available, I'll let you know, but to my knowledge, they're all original. So that's going to make it tough when we're dealing with the iPhone 10 in the short term. There's not going to be a very cheap alternative. And, you know, with people using AppleCare and other types of protection plans through their carriers, it's going to be difficult to compete with that in the short term, but that's not anything new. This has been happening with every generation of iPhone. You know, for the first 6 months, it's like, you know what, you might want to take that to Apple to get it fixed, because we just don't have the supply line going yet. But when we do, and a lot of these get more into circulation, then that will, of course, change. And you know, what's interesting to me is that I came across an article earlier, and for some reason, I cannot pause this slideshow, which I would really like to do, because I wanted to show you guys and kind of get your take on this. Let's see if we can get this to go to manual instead of looping here. Let's see, where are we? Is that it? Well, one moment. Okay, so I think if I can control this manually, I wanted to show you something. Do I have hotkeys here? Let's find out. Nope, I don't have hotkeys, so give me a moment. I need to fix something right quick. I've almost got this thing down. There's one limitation on here that doesn't allow me to do exactly what I would like to, but I can fix that, I think. Where are you? How did it vanish? Batteries. Okay, here we go. So if I can do this manually, I thought this was really interesting. Let's see if that works. Does that work? Still not working. Okay, well, in any case, it looks like there's some speculation that the iPhone 10 may drop quite a bit in, or reasonably in the upcoming months, due to kind of there it is, iPhone 10 price deals, and I missed it. Gosh darn it, I wish I could have froze it right there. But the iPhone 10 might be coming down in price. It seems to have not really kind of made its mark as far as sales projections, so that will be interesting to see if and when that does happen. And, you know, there's a certain point where, we've kind of felt like the iPhone market has become fairly saturated in the respect that people who want an iPhone, a great percentage of the people who want to have an iPhone now have an iPhone. So what do you do now to get your existing customers to upgrade, besides throttling the speed on their phone? And I think after a new release on something like the iPhone X, which has not really met its sales expectations from what I've read, is that you've got to give an incentive to customers to upgrade. Maybe they give them a credit to trade in their old phones. Maybe they lower the price, whatever it takes. I have a feeling that Apple's future is probably going to be significantly affected by their ability to convert people or to upsell people into the iPhone X. Just my speculation, of course, but I think that's going to be a big deal. And when it does, of course, we should start seeing more availability of the screens. I really hope somebody else starts to manufacture them. Where were you? Do you ever wish that aftermarket screens had an oleophobic coating and cold press frame? Yeah, I have come across some aftermarket that seem to pick up fingerprints really fast. But I also, if that's what you're referring to, I don't insist, but I really encourage people to get tempered glass. I have it on all of my phones, and it's really a great, it's a great investment to have that on your screen and not have to break it again. And it's pretty easy to encourage people to invest in something like that when they just broke a screen and have to pay, $100+ to have it replaced. But yeah, I wish that they would make the aftermarket screens in that, when it comes to that, more like the OEMs. As far as the cold press frames, to my knowledge, most of the refurbishers are using cold press now, I think. I mean, we haven't had any problems with separation like we did back right after the iPhone 6 came out, so I think they kind of caught on to that. I mean, there are plenty of people bragging about how they use the cold press method, so I think they fixed that problem. Do you ever think about creating a creating a pay-per-month plan that is likely $15 a month or something like $15 a month and have like 2 claims a year and charge just the cost of the screen and charge more per month for OEM? I have a good answer for that for you in just a second. Harvey, for your question, do I know what firmware update caused this battery problem? My understanding is that it's been going on for quite a while, but I don't want to say the wrong answer. So I know that it got worse with 11, but it was prior to that, to the best of my knowledge. And from some of what I've read, and I don't want to say anything that I can't prove or I don't have reliable information on, but something that I read today said that they've been doing it like since the iPhone 4. Like every software upgrade has been throttling the phone to a certain extent. So I suspect that it's been going on for a long time. It was only recently that someone actually did a test in order to figure out, that is in fact what's happening. As far as doing a pay-per-month plan, so I have some experience with that. One of the companies that I work for actually sold something kind of like that. So they had their own protection plan where you could spend, I want to say it was about $7 a month, and you would get a repair if you broke your screen, and you would get a replacement if your phone was lost or stolen. Now, obviously, that had to be documented. You had to have a police report, submit the IMEI. The IMEI had to be blacklisted, etc. So they did a very good job of being thorough about this and making sure that it was, I don't want to say fraud-proof, but, very resistant to people taking advantage of the system. And it seemed to be working out pretty well for a while, and I think what killed it, one of the things that killed the program was that, and this is where one of the reasons that I wouldn't do that myself unless I figured out maybe some sort of prepaid arrangements. But one of the difficulties with that plan was that there is such a high incidence of fraud when it comes to credit cards and debit cards that people often change their account information. So they change to a different credit card number, and now any auto payment system that's set up stops. So what you end up with oftentimes is a customer who has had their coverage canceled because they are not paying for that, that $15 a month or whatever it is. They're not paying that fee every month automatically. You try to contact them, you can't get a hold of them, they don't respond back, and the next time you hear from them, they want to make a claim. So they call you up and say, hey, I need to get my screen repaired. I have this protection plan on my phone. And you say, well, you haven't made a payment in 6 months. And they say, well, you guys never called me. And of course we did. So there ended up being too much of the, where does the blame really lie? And people were changing their account information too often to really keep up with that, to keep, you know, the premiums coming in at a rate where it offset the cost of the program. So at least at the time that I was there, they discontinued that program. You know, anyone who was grandfathered in got to keep it as long as their payments were current, but they kind of stopped selling that, and I can see why that would cause a lot of problems. So if someone wanted to say, hey, I'll pay you up front for a year, maybe, but you really have to have a large pool of customers to continue to pay those premiums in order to offset those expenses when you have to replace someone's phone, you know, which is once in a while what we had to do. So I thought about it, and from what I've seen of it firsthand, I don't think right now is probably the best time to do it, unless you have people that want to link their bank account up for payment or something. You know, figure out a way that's more reliable than using a recurring charge and on a credit card or a debit card. That would be my take on it. Hold on one second. I need to turn this fan down. Okay, so yeah, I think as far as the updates, Harvey, it's probably gone back quite a ways, and just recently Motorola and LG, and I want to say Samsung, all came out to proudly proclaim that they never throttle their phones because of the battery, which, you know, I really think that's the question. You know, if you wanted to do that, why wouldn't you disclose that to the customer in the first place? And I think a lot of, you know, some people are, you know, hey, Apple can do no wrong, and they're okay with it. It makes sense to them, you know. And I've seen articles that say, you know, Apple did throttle your battery, but it was the best choice to make. It was for the benefit of the customer. Okay, you know, if that's your opinion, cool. But in my, you know, from my position, I really feel like Apple kind of was a bit deceptive in not warning people about that. You know, just go ahead and slow the phone down without telling you. And the solution of a $29 battery, no, that's, to me, not acceptable as a customer. If you want to replace my battery, and there's a possibility that you can get your battery replaced for free. I'm not saying that they will, but I have seen Apple, and I've heard reports already of people going to the Apple store and saying, no, I'm not going to pay $29 for the battery. You guys messed up. Replace my battery. Obviously, they're not going to do it every time, but there are situations where I've seen them be even more generous than you can imagine. You know, I've gone to an Apple store before with the phone where we were supposed to pay, what was it, like $129 for the screen repair or something like that, and they ended up coming out and just giving us a phone with no deductible. Now, I don't know if that means that somebody in the back room messed up and did something that they weren't supposed to and broke the phone, or what happened, but, you know, on more than one occasion, I've gone to Apple and they've said, you know what, here, take it for free. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And in, you know, in other situations, it's like, no, we can't help you, you know. So it's really difficult to say how they make that decision. But if it helped, you know, I would certainly ask, hey guys, it's $29. Can you just replace the battery? You messed up. It's not my fault. You know, I'm a Apple customer. I'm using your product, obviously. I don't think it's right to pass that cost on to the consumer. That doesn't make a lot of sense, in my opinion. Robert, I skipped your question. Oh, okay, sorry about that. Thank you for reminding me. By the way, friends, I try to answer every question on here, but sometimes the chat moves a bit and I get a bit wordy, so I'm going to try not to do that so much. But if I skip a question, do remind me. So your question was, I'm looking to buy broken phones and fixing them to sell later on. Do you think that that would be a good idea? I think it would be a good idea depending on where you buy them from. So I get this question quite a bit. You know, when people come into training, they're like, well, and I do recommend, you know, when you go to start fixing phones, the best way to get practice and experience is not working on your customers' phones. You know, buy some phones, consider it an investment. You will get some of your money back, especially if you can fix them. The big issue with buying broken phones, or big issues, I should say, is that one, right now, people will pay a ridiculous, if you're talking about iPhones, and I know you didn't say just iPhones, but I just want to point this out. When it comes to iPhones, the market for broken phones has become just ridiculous. Like, people will pay way more for a broken iPhone than it's worth, you know, at least for most people. So it's a little difficult to come up with them, at least if you're looking online. You know, if you're trying to go to eBay and look for a broken phone, I'm going to buy it and try to fix it, there's a good chance you're going to get a lot of garbage. Now, sometimes you can buy lots of phone, L-O-T-S, lots, not lots of, but a lot of phones where you get like 10, 15 phones, whatever, for a flat rate. And sometimes you'll be surprised at what you find in those lots because people don't really pick through them very carefully. They just know they don't work and they sell them. But in my experience, it's tough to come across broken phones online that are worth investing in to repair and then sell to try to make a profit. You know, a lot of times you'll break even, but if you can buy them from private parties, excuse me, if you can, if you have a storefront, or if you have friends or family, or you see stuff on, you know, the selling app of your choice that you trust, and you can meet people and you can get good value, remember, you've got to get them a lot cheaper than what they're worth, because sometimes you're not going to be able to fix them. The other factor that comes into play there is, does that phone have an account tied to it? And you have to jump through some hoops, but if you can get the IMEI from an iPhone, you can check online and determine whether or not there's an iCloud. At least you could. Now it's become a little complicated. You know, last I heard, they wanted to have your iCloud information before they would tell you if there was a cloud on the phone, but there may still be a way to get around that. And that's the big concern. You know, you don't want to invest a bunch of time fixing a phone that has a cloud lock or factory reset protection or anything like that on it. So if you know that the phone will light up, you know that there's no account on it, and it has some problem, then yes, if you feel that you can fix it, by all means, you can try to repair it and sell it for a profit. You can also strip parts off of it, worst case scenario. You know, if you can't get it going 100%, now you do have extra parts for that particular phone. So yes, I think it's a good idea, but you really have to be careful about what you buy, who you buy from, and whether or not there's some sort of lock built into that phone that you won't be able to get past. Because if so, then, you know, you've got something better than a brick, but you definitely don't have a usable phone that you can sell. Okay. Do you use battery pull tabs for double-sided tape? John, if you're talking about the batteries if you're talking about the iPhone batteries, those little pull tabs, those little wall hanging things, I do, and it's not always 100% successful. You know, just the other day, I felt like I was getting really good with that. You know, I usually wrap them up on a screwdriver while I'm pulling them out, and I pull it at a specific angle that usually tends to work pretty well, and just the other day I broke 2 of them. So I do whenever possible, if that's what you're talking about, but sometimes it doesn't cooperate. You know, it seems like, I don't know why, just out of the blue it won't work. Now, here's a real sensitive area where I encourage people to be super, super careful, but if you do break those tabs off, you can usually lift the battery up just enough to get a straight pair of tweezers to go down and grab a hold of the remainder of that adhesive and pull out a piece until you can get that wrapped up. But of course, the thing you have to be really careful of is, if you're careless, it's easy to puncture the battery if you're using precision tweezers, so you don't want that to happen. Whatever you do, I always use safety glasses when I'm removing batteries, just in case. You know, so far I haven't had any explode on me, but certainly doesn't hurt to be careful. But I do use the strips whenever possible. They don't always cooperate. I don't know why. Also for training courses, what are the requirements? Is it a one-on-one class, or also how much does it cost? Hey John, I'll add the information down in the video description after this is done. It is 4 days. It's $1,000 for the course, and that is, we start at 10 a.m. and we go until 6 p.m. And it is typically not one-on-one, but it's usually one-on-two. So we don't take any more than 3 people in the classroom at a time. Occasionally I have 1, and occasionally I have 3. Usually on the average we'll have 2 people, and that's as high, you know, I'll go up to 3 and that's it, because beyond that we can't really give you, you know, me by myself, I can't give you the feedback that you need, answer everybody's questions, and make sure no one's developing any habits. But most of the time it's going to be 2 people. Occasionally it ends up being one-on-one though. What do you tell people when they ask if their iPhone 7 is still waterproof after repair? So I've tried to get this response down to as few words as possible, because as you notice when you talk to customers, if you go beyond 2 sentences, a lot of times you just, you know, they don't do what we do for a living, so a lot of it's just kind of like, okay, this guy's just talking now, and they kind of tune you out. So here's what I tell people when they ask me if any phone is as waterproof after a repair as it was. I say, your phone was not waterproof from the moment that you broke the screen. It will never be like it was brand new, no matter who fixes it, but we do install the waterproofing adhesive that it had on it originally. That's like as few words as I can get it down to. And then I'll be happy to show them, you know, what we use and how we do it and stuff like that. But the most important thing is, once you break your screen, your phone is no longer waterproof. No matter who fixes it for you, it will never be like new again. Okay, it's already not waterproof. And it never was really waterproof. I hate that word. It was water resistant, right? But, you know, the fewer words you can use there, the better. Beha, what's going on, man? Glad you can join us. I kind of went through a lot of this stuff, and I was thinking of you, man, because you kind of encouraged me to redo this specific topic again, and I think that was a great idea. I think this is probably going to be an ongoing thing for a while until we figure out what people are happy to settle with and where these lawsuits go. And, you know, as we know, those could go many years, but what I read this morning is that there are at least 15 different lawsuits against Apple on this battery thing right now, and I really think it would be as easy as them just giving us the option to turn off the throttling, but they have not, for whatever reasons, chosen to go that direction. And I'm sure that some of this is based on the advice from their attorneys, because they don't do things that can come back to bite them usually. Okay, so we're caught up on the questions, and we still have a good 20 minutes. So we can revisit this topic at any point. I think there was something else here. Give me 1 second. I want to take a look at my notes and make sure that I don't skip over anything. We definitely did the... okay, we definitely did this. We definitely did this. We talked about Apple, Throttlegate, right to repair. I'm going to show you something here, hopefully, if I set up my slides correctly. Happy New Year, by the way, Beha, and everyone else who jumped in just right now. Repair training, yeah. Okay, so I think I covered most of this stuff. Have you started ordering iPhone 8 screens yet, and are they expensive? No, not yet. You know what? I take it back. I think we do. I am not in charge of ordering the parts, so I would have to check. I believe that we have those available, and I believe they are expensive, and I can tell you right now, if you're curious, about what you could expect to pay for an OEM. Hopefully, give me 1 second, and I'll try to pull this up and see what one of our vendors has them for. So Apple iPhone 8, and you know what's funny is it doesn't seem like the iPhone 8 is nearly as popular as the iPhone 10, but it is an LCD, which is good news for us. So if we are looking at an aftermarket LCD screen and digitizer for an iPhone 8, they're looking like 30 bucks, 30-ish dollars. If we go to the OEM, we are looking at around 110, and I'm sure that we have some of the aftermarkets on hand. We must. But for LCDs, big difference between that and the OLEDs. Do you have a video on how to unlock a phone? I have. Sorry, let me back up here. I'm skipping people's questions. Also, where do you get your iPad glass screens and what quality? Hey, John, somebody asked that recently, and if you're talking about just the digitizer, we buy those aftermarket all the time, and as long as you install the Captain tape, I want to say that Injured Gadgets on that one, but I bought digitizers for iPads off of eBay, third party, relatively inexpensive, and I've never really had a problem with the touch screens as long as you install the Captain tape on the bottom. Now, if you're talking about something that has a fused LCD and glass, to my knowledge, you're going to be buying OEM. I don't believe that there's any aftermarket LCDs for the iPads. At least, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't seen that yet. So for the most part, they're going to be refurbished, fitted with a new piece of glass. And again, you can go to Injured Gadgets, Mobile Centrics. I want to use that as a suggestion and not an endorsement, although we do use these companies sometimes. And here's why. When people ask me about where we get parts from, a lot of times we get them from a guy who comes to us. So he comes to the store and sells stuff to us, and he's not the type of business where you can order from online. Now, I don't mind, recommending good vendors online. The problem with that is that this video may be up for who knows how long, and things tend to change. There are vendors that we used to do business with that I would have recommended to you 6 months ago that I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole now, and vice versa. So I really hesitate to say, here's where you should always go to get your stuff. But with that said, as of now, I don't have any problem pointing people to Injured Gadgets or to Mobile Centrics. To my knowledge, they have kept their quality up to a level that is, at least satisfactory for everyone. But when it comes to the digitizers on the iPads, just the touchscreen, I go with the, with the aftermarket stuff. They work great. I mean, they're just as good as the OEM, in my opinion, when it comes to the touchscreens. Okay, so do you have a video on how to unlock a phone? That's kind of a broad question. It depends on what you're looking for, Robert, but if you want to unlock an iPhone, yes, I actually do. If you want to unlock a Galaxy, like probably Galaxy S3 and up, I have a video for that. So if you just check my channel, type into the search unlock, and you'll see that I do have some videos for unlocking those. I've even got a couple videos on some obscure phones, but I don't have videos for every single phone. In most cases, the process will be the same when it comes to any iPhone or any Android, most Androids, you pop in a foreign SIM card and you punch in the unlock code for the most part. Obviously, you have to obtain that unlock code. When you're dealing with iPhones, of course, you have to use iTunes in order to complete the process. But you can definitely find both of those videos or an example or two of each of those on my channel. All right. Yep. So now what I wanted to show you all, hopefully we have a few techs out there right now. And if not, that's okay. This will just be me talking to myself, and hopefully you'll find this interesting. So the reason that I wanted to talk about this is because I know that there are people out there who do micro soldering repairs. And as you might have seen up here in the ticker, my question is whether or not the person who disassembles your phones in order for your technician to work on the logic boards is taking the care necessary to make sure that that repair goes smoothly from start to finish. And I'll show you why in just a second. I just saw a couple questions pop up here. So, oh, Hawaii, hey, aloha, glad to see you here. Happy New Year. And you can hopefully help me out with this next one. What is so bad about their included adhesive, and what happens if you use it, and why haven't they tried to improve it? Good question. I don't know what it is about the adhesive, and I'm glad you brought that up. The adhesive that comes built into the iPad digitizers generally sucks. It's not very good. I don't know why. I don't know why they wouldn't improve that. It's terrible. I agree 100%. I don't use the stuff that's built in by default. I like the red tape adhesive and the Tesa or however you pronounce that. That stuff works great. And I'm also using a 3M primer. I think it's 30, what's the number on it? I may have some close by. I've got some primer around here that we use on the metal. So obviously you remove all the adhesive that's there and clean it up. And really you could use rubbing alcohol. It'd probably work just as well. But having a clean surface is a big factor there. I would agree with you all the way, though. The adhesive that comes with those screens is bogus. I don't know why they even include. Just send me the digitizer without the adhesive because it sucks, whatever it is that they do. You have to do both. Okay, so you've got good quality control, obviously. So here's my thing. I use it in Tesa. Yeah, Tesa? Is it Tesa? Tesa? It's T-E-S-A, so I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Either way, here's the thing. I had a phone come in, and it had been sent off for repair somewhere else. Ooh, B7000. You know, I've used B7000 on the old frames when they weren't holding. I just have this thing about glue where every time I seal up an iPad and, do a thorough job of putting it all together, that's when I'm going to find that little speck of dust. Or you're in a more humid climate probably than I am, so I assume you don't have as many issues with dust. But I will always find something under the screen, have to open it up and clean it off again, or fingerprint from the factory, or a little piece of hair that fell on there. So that's why I hesitate. Don't even try to pronounce it. That's why I hesitate with the glue. I mean, I know it'll hold it on there, but when we take that screen off, it's probably going to break, right? More than likely. So we had this phone that came in, and here was the deal. So it was an iPhone 6. Do I have it handy? I'll actually have the screen off of it right now because I'm going to go in there again. Let's come back. Actually, I'll leave that on the screen. So iPhone 6 was sent off to be repaired for backlight issue. Pretty standard, right? Came back and the screen lit up. So, the first thing that the person did was notice that they got a message on the screen that says Touch ID will not activate. So why, if the backlight was repaired, would the Touch ID stop working? So of course, they didn't want to send it back in again. I happened to come across it and take a look, and when I opened it up, the first thing I checked was the cable. They wouldn't really have any reason to go near the Touch ID cable, but you never know, right? So I checked both ends of that. The connector looked good. Everything was cool. So I decided to dig a little deeper because, from what I saw, it didn't make any sense for the Touch ID not to work unless somebody had swapped out the home button, maybe confused the screens. But there was a sticker on the screen that had a description of what was wrong with the phone. So it wouldn't make sense to me that those got mixed up somehow. And, the owner was confident that this was the original screen that came with the phone. So why would you, after you sent your phone in for a backlight repair, end up having it come back and the Touch ID stop working? So here's what I did. I started to probe around on the Touch ID connector. And if you look here, this is J2118, which is where the Touch ID plugs in, right on the edge of the logic board. And if you look just above the 21, so it says J2118. If you look just above the 21, pin number 8, which is probably really small for you guys. That's why I want to kind of narrate this, so hopefully it'll make sense. But that is where the 1.8 volt goes through for the Touch ID. And that thing it's supposed to have 490 resistance, and it had 0. So there's an open line there. There was nothing there at all. And so I'm thinking, okay, so something along the way went wrong with this particular part of the connector. So that would make sense as to why the Touch ID isn't working, right? So what do? We take a look. Oh, are you telling me my thing's not going to work now? There we go. So we take a look at that connector, and it goes to a capacitor, and it also connects to a filter, which was my first thought. Okay, maybe that filter was bad. But I tested the filter. The filter was good. The capacitor is going to ground on one side. It's not shorted. I mean, it could be failing in some way, but it seemed really odd to me, you know, that this has nothing to do with the backlight system, and yet there's a problem on this line. So why would you ever need to go anywhere near that? Well, if we take a look, if we follow that filter, that will go over here to the LDO for the Touch ID. So I take a look at this under the microscope and just touch it. You know, there's that overfill coating over the top of it. And I just touch it because I was going to strip away, you know, on that capacitor and that filter, I was going to strip away that rubbery stuff over the top and see what's going on. And the moment I touch that LDO, it's wiggling around on the board. Like it's not even attached, okay? So I'm going, okay, that would explain why there's no path to ground, because this thing is where it gets grounded after it goes through the filter. So what we're looking at here is, you know, an LDO that's not attached to the logic board. I started moving it around and it completely comes off, like there was nothing holding it on there. The downside is, you see where this arrow is pointing? It has taken the pad completely off the board, so there's nothing there. Like there's nothing to attach to. I thought, you know, I was so excited that I traced it down. I figured out where the problem was. You know, the LDO could be bad, but either way we can either replace it or reball it and put it back on there. But when I lift it up, the pad is completely gone, so there's nothing to attach it to. And my first question is this: how would you guys approach this when there's nothing there? Okay, so and the balls underneath these LDOs, they are much larger, obviously, than any other, you know, most of the ICs. If you're dealing with Touch IC or U2 IC or anything like that, those are tiny, tiny little balls. But on the LDO, those things look monstrous, man. They look like BBs under the microscope. You know, they're so big and they sit so tall. I'm thinking, what do I put underneath there? Very good at diagnosing. Thank you. What do I put underneath there to attach a wire to? You can see I don't have to go far. All I have to do is connect that corner to C2181. But what am I going to put on the board? So I'm Googling. I'm looking at all these different places, like how do you replace the torn pad? And you know, there's really a lot of questions out there as to whether or not that's possible or effective, or you know, what techniques, and do I need to buy the special equipment? I was just racking my brain. I said, you know what? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to try, because I got nothing to lose, right? Either you have Touch ID or you don't. I'm not going to do any more damage to this than it's already been done, because the pad's already gone. So what I did is I took a jumper, and I hope that you can see this on the screen here. But what I did, oh, and here's the actual torn pad. So you can see it is completely broken off there, like it's gone. Draw solder to it. That probably would have been a good option. You know, my concern was that once I got the heat on there, any solder that's sitting on where that pad used to be might start to flow out and cause some other problems. And I could be completely wrong about that. Definitely will give it a shot next time. But I was wondering, like, how in the heck do I get this empty hole right there to connect to that capacitor that's sitting right above it? And unfortunately, I didn't take a picture of it. So I'm going to have to explain to you. What I did is I attached a wire. Let's see if you can kind of see the jumper. So this is kind of the finished product here, but I attached a wire to the capacitor, and you can see, if you can look, I can't point to the screen because you can't see what I'm pointing at, but on the right lower corner of that cap, you can kind of see the wire sticking up. So I kind of ran the wire down and then across on the bottom, and I actually made a loop. So underneath that pad, where that pad was, there's actually a little loop of wire, because I felt like that might be a little more reliable than just having a single strand laying on there. And to my amazement, this thing actually sat down. It's a little crooked because that corner is lower than where the other balls are, obviously. But it actually connected. I turned the phone back on, and the Touch ID works. And I was like so excited. Let's see, I think I have even another. Okay, there's a kind of a further out shot of that one, right? So that jumper, you know, and by the way, so in order to get that wire to sit in place, after I laid it down, I did put some solder mask over the top. that little conformal coating stuff, and I put it under the UV light so it's cured, so that wire is staying in place. My second question, probably 2 out of 3 here, is do I go ahead and cover that LDO with something else to keep it there? Because I don't know how secure it's going to be attached to the board at this point. I mean, it's working, but if somebody drops the phone a couple times, I'm concerned of that going bad. Now, I can tell you by looking at the other connectors on this logic board, and this is why I brought this on here, or why I want to show you guys, is that when I looked at this logic board, if you've seen a connector before that looks like it's been mashed down, like somebody didn't match it up properly and the plastic's all bent up and the teeth are kind of bent a little bit, that's what this phone looked like. So this technician who fixed the backlight issue somewhat on this phone, we'll get to in a moment, I assume was not the person that took the phone apart, because the way that this thing was so screwed up on the inside, more than likely this LDO was not functioning because of pry damage. Like, that's the only thing that makes sense to me. There's no, what we're looking at right here, there's no part of the backlight really present here unless you go over and underneath the shield. So I don't understand how they could have damaged this outside of just physical neglect, you know, like not paying attention, prying under there too far, and knocked it off the board. So when we have, you know, someone who is doing micro soldering in the back, and they're having a person at the front of the store, probably, I assume, you know, pulling the boards out and handing it to them and going, and that's all they're doing is disassembling and assembling the phones, that's a part of the chain that needs to be as strong as every other link. You know, you can have someone in the back who's doing high-tech stuff, but the guy at the front is causing some problems and basically ruining the repair, you know, for the most part, for all practical purposes, I should say. Let's see. Quick question. How do you positively diagnose a baseband problem in an iPhone 6 searching no network symptoms? How do you positively diagnose the baseband no IMEI, probably, is going to be my guess. There are a number of things that can cause that problem, and I think we talked about this on the last stream. It's really my last resort would be, and I haven't reballed a baseband just because I don't want to brick anybody's phone. How can you positively diagnose it? Probably the lack of an IMEI, I think, showing up in the settings. You can repair a broken path with conductive glue, also conductive paint if the part is attached. Okay. Want to diagnose with metaphysical certitude before removing and reballing. Good. Yeah. That's a tough one. I mean, how do you really know? I guess when you run out of options, you just kind of go to that as your last resort. So in any case, you know, my point here was that no matter how good your technician is, if you have a phone disassembler, you know, someone who's just taking the screen off and pulling the board and putting it back in, obviously things can go wrong at that stage. And my assumption here is that the person who was taking care of that part, you know, was in a hurry or didn't have a lot of experience or thought, oh, it's just an iPhone 6, no big deal, and they ended up jacking up the baseband, which I got to work. However, after I put the phone back together, I noticed that the backlight only goes to about 1/3, and then it doesn't go all the way up after that. You can move the slider across, and you don't get the full backlight showing up on the screen. So here's my real question. Okay, and there's a slightly closer shot of the jumper, so it works. You know, might have not been the only way to repair this. It's working now. We'll see in the long term. I mean, obviously, we'll give them a warranty on this, so if it comes back, we know exactly where to look if the Touch ID goes bad. Gosh darn it, why doesn't my thing work here? I have more slides. There we go. Okay, so here's the thing. After I got this back together, I've got about 1/3 backlight, and this seems to be the problem. Pin 28 here is showing open line on the LCD connector, and I thought, all right, the obvious thing to do here, even though they're testing good, would be to replace this cap and this filter, right? Because they're part of the backlight system, and even though they're testing good, maybe the filter's starting to fail, you know, maybe the capacitor's starting to fail, maybe something's wrong there. But before I do that, the reason why I was really curious to see if anyone else has experienced this before, the 1/3 backlight thing, because after I replace these, if that doesn't fix the problem, which I'll be doing today, here's where they go, and here's my real question. Though that line actually goes to the chestnut. So on E2 and E3, that part of the backlight circuit goes in and then back out of chestnut. And I was under the impression that chestnut's job was to boost the touchscreen functionality, and from what I'm looking at here, it seems like maybe Chestnut is also part of the backlight boost system. Does that sound like it makes sense? I mean, with my logic, I think that it does. I wasn't aware that that was an issue. So if these two components aren't where the problem lies, and obviously if this thing isn't getting to ground at any point, we've got open line, then the only place it could get to ground will be this capacitor, which is in fact going to ground, or underneath the chip, which is going to be my last resort to pull that out. I really don't want to have to do that, but you know, obviously if the simple stuff, which is part of my philosophy, is if there's something easy to do, we'll do that first, and if that doesn't work, then we can dig a little further. Has anyone run into a situation like this where the Chestnut chip is causing the backlight not to get boosted to full capacity in any sense? Want to diagnose? Okay. I looked for no IMEI and it was all right. Yeah, and that doesn't necessarily mean that the baseband is functioning properly. I wish I had a good answer for you, Hawaii. I don't know 100%. You know, if you've already checked the date and time, and you know, obviously you tried different sims and it's stuck on searching, try to restore it, DFU restore. You start running out of options at a certain point. I don't know a 100% answer though, you know, outside of if there's no IMEI, then obviously you've got a problem. But the risk involved in that one has kind of kept me away from it for the most part. I really don't want to reball baseband or NAND or CPU. And I want to say that baseband's also got a bunch of underfill underneath it, doesn't it? If I remember correctly, which would also discourage me. But hopefully, which phone is that, by the way? Is it iPhone 6? Let's see. Okay, conductive glue. I wonder if that's... let me grab something real quick. I wonder if you guys are talking about something I have. And for anyone who came on here just looking for iPhone battery stuff, sorry we got a little bit technical here, but when I can get other tech's input on things, I love to do that because I think that is one of the best benefits. So are you guys talking about this? This is a, what is it? An overcoat pen or something like that? Oh gosh, it's all stapled together. I haven't even used it yet. Someone actually discouraged me from trying this, but I wonder if that would have worked. This is an oh no, I'm sorry, my bad. This is an overcoat pen. Never mind. I have seen something similar to what you're talking about. I think it's like a liquid, a conductive liquid that you can use to draw a circuit out. Is that what we're talking about? Yeah. iPhone 6, that would be my suggestion, Hawaii. Get to the point where you've tried everything else you possibly can, and then if you wanna risk it, be careful. Respect my bro for the subject. I think, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps it up. That's what I had on here today for the most part. So I'm going to stay on here for at least a few more minutes in case any other questions come in. That was kind of everything that I wanted to talk about today. You know, mainly the iPhone battery thing. Where'd you go? Oh, let's go back to batteries. It will be interesting to see how this develops, and we will continue to keep an eye on it and put some more information up here. I tried to post a link, but I can't. Hey, Robert, what link are you trying to post? Because there's a thing on here that prevents people from doing that. And I can post it for you if it's something that's going to benefit everyone. I certainly don't mind doing that. What link? Yeah, I don't use the pens, but the syringe for conductive paint. Okay. You know what I've been using? Actually, I should have grabbed this also, just in case anyone's wondering. One moment. This is what I've been doing for, you know, anytime I run a jumper, they have this UV curable solder mask. And the only thing is, I don't know, hopefully you can see that. You know what's funny? It looks like the zigzag guy if you look at the little icon on there. So this stuff works great for coating things on the inside. It cures under the UV pretty fast. The only tricky part, of course, is applying it, because when you're working with something that small, and you know, more is not better with this stuff. You want the coating to be as thin as possible. So I'm actually using a sewing needle and just dipping the tip of the needle into this stuff and putting it on there. And man, I love it. That stuff works great. And as you can imagine, a tube like this will probably last me many lifetimes as long as it doesn't get damaged or anything like that. I learned something today. Awesome. Cool. Conductive glue. Hey, Robert, if you can tell me what the link is, or just kind of spell it out with some spaces in there, I'll post it on here. I don't mind doing that at all. Yeah. So that's it. I will be back on Thursday, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and then back to the regular schedule next week on Monday. Obviously, you know, I thought about doing this yesterday because I was feeling good. I didn't have a headache, no hangover, nothing, didn't stay up too late. But I thought that there's probably a lot of people out there who would rather just, you know, spend time with their family and away from work, and maybe didn't even feel like getting out of bed. That's why I wanted to move this to today, but I didn't want to leave you guys for 3 weeks and not be on here. So I will definitely be back to the regular schedule next week. I've got training coming up on the 16th, so that may affect things just a bit, but I'm off on Mondays from now on, so I can always do this Mondays. It's use when a component falls with the trace. That's cool. Give me a name and I'll look it up and post it. Or gosh, what's another way to do this? What's it called? Do you know what the name is? Am I on Reddit? I go on Reddit for news. I actually have, here's the thing, Hawaii, I am terrible with remembering accounts when I move from one phone to another. So I currently have a Reddit account for as long as I have this phone, and I have no idea what the password is. So once I switch to another device, I'll probably have a brand new account. So yes, I've been on Reddit for quite a while under many different usernames, and I don't post a whole lot, but I've seen the repair forum, the phone repair forum they have there. In fact, I kind of had an exchange with, what's his name, Josh, I think, and I want to get him on here. I'd like to have him come on and talk. He's done a really good job of moderating that forum, and there's some oh, you want to chat? Okay, so yeah, if you want to, I have a Reddit account, and it was a randomly generated username. So I'll put that down in the video description after this finishes. If you want to message me there, no problem. Oh, so you got the link to work. So eBay, let's see if I can pull it up and repost that link so that it's easy to see. There we go. So do this, copy, go over here, talk out loud while I'm figuring it out. Let's see. Wow, that's a long link. eBay.com. Okay. Let's see if this works. Yeah, you know what? I might even just shorten that link for you real quick. Let's see if this works. So that way, if anyone comes across here, you know what's funny is I'll have to put this in the description anyways because no one's going to be able to click on a link that is in the chat. But if it makes it any easier, let's do this. Right? Come on. All right, how about that? So what is that, by the way? I made the link and I didn't even check it out. Let's see what that is. For all I know, that could link to some crazy website. Okay, silver conductive wire glue, 0.2 milliliter wire electrical paste adhesive PCB paint. I got to get some of this. That looks great. It's in like a syringe. Okay, thank you, Robert. I will most definitely check that out. That could be very useful. Josh the Phone God. Yeah, Josh the Phone God. Hey, I like his channel, actually. In fact, like I said, we've been kind of missing each other, exchanging messages here. But I want to get him on, and in fact, I wanted to work on a collaboration video with him because I like his channel. So I'm trying to get in touch with him for sure. From the stuff you have bought from Injured Gadgets, is the defect rate really low? Yeah, I'd say it's lower than normal. I like Injured Gadgets. They have good customer service. So like I said, at this point in time, I don't have any problem recommending them. If they want to send me a t-shirt or anything, that would be cool. But yeah, I've experienced and heard many good things from them. So maybe through email, send you a message through YouTube with my email. Yeah, let me give me a second and I will pull up my Reddit. Oh, it's on my phone, but I'm going to type this and I think it's right. I don't mind that at all. If anyone wants to contact me, like I said, this is a randomly generated username, but on Reddit, if you send a message to that, whatever that says, you can reach me there as long as I have my iPhone that I'm using now, because like I said, I'll be changing phones and I have no idea what that password is. Maybe I can transfer the password or change it while I'm logged in or something, but for sure, shoot me a message, Hawaii. Definitely better ways to communicate than through YouTube messages because there's a lot to filter through there. Absolutely. And if you talk to Josh, tell him to hit me up. I got a message from him and then I responded again and I'm kind of waiting for him to get back. So it will take you out of many problems. Cool, man. I'll definitely get that. How much was that stuff anyways? That was $9.95. All right. I'm going to get some and check it out. Hello, Merrick. If you're just jumping on, man, we're just about to wrap it up here. But like I said, I'll keep this open as long as we have some chat going here for sure. And yeah, feel free to message me. Leave a comment on YouTube videos works, but if you send me a message through YouTube, it's really easy to forget to check those messages. So I really prefer that people just post a reply to my latest video or whatever. The messaging system on YouTube is kind of goofy, especially with the whole Google Plus thing. It doesn't make life easy. All right, so I think that's it. I am going to go to learning repair all electronic. Awesome. Good for you. And that's a great way to look at it. I tell people now, whenever they ask me about getting into phone repair, I would really say, yes, now is a good time to get into electronics repair, because, phones, it's hard to say. There will always be some that we can fix, but there's a lot more that you can do besides phones. And it's amazing once you understand the mechanics behind disassembling and reassembling phones, how that kind of just bleeds over into other areas of life, like working on your car or plumbing or, all sorts of other stuff. And, besides phones, we've got tablets, we've got watches, smart watches. Who knows what's going to be next? So to kind of just think of that as a general area that you're getting into electronics repair, that's the best way to think about it. I had them free to a screen repairer and stocked them for sale. Yep, I gotta go too. Guys, thanks a lot for coming out. I do really appreciate it. I'll be back next Monday. And I already said that. I know, I'm redundant. But hey, you never know who just jumped in at this point. I will also be on Thursday, 6 p.m. Look forward to seeing you all. So have a great one, whatever it is you're going to be doing. And I will talk to you later.